Hi all, good evening everyone. In this session we are going to discuss about exception handling concept. So first let us see what's the exception. Generally in Java, the code execution will be statement by statement. It will be line by line. So first line, second line, third line and so on, 10th line. If there are 10 lines of code, first line, second line and so on, 10th lines code, 10th line of code. This is the execution process in Java. Then, what's an exception? An exception is an abnormal termination of your program. It's called exception. If our class has 10 lines of code, if it executes 10 lines of code and terminates the program, it's a normal flow of the execution. If we terminate abnormally at line of 5th or 6th, then we call it as a abnormal termination of the program. For example, I'm going to create one package, one class. Class name is Vishnu, Guru Vishnu. So this is our class. So here, that is the main method. In this main method, I'm going to write some statement. This is so this is a first line. So this is the second line, third line, and fourth line, line, seventh line, eighth line, eighth line, ninth line, 10th line. So second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 10th line. So here in our program we have 10 lines of code. So when I execute this program, see output, what will be the output? Yeah. See, what's the output? So first line, second line, third line, fourth line, and fifth line, sixth line, seventh line, and so on, 10th line, up to 10th line. So it has executed statement by statement. This is the behavior of a Java program. So behavior of Java program. In case if something goes wrong in between uh, these 10 lines of code, then the program will execute, the program will terminate abnormally. This is normal flow of the execution. So the first line executed, second line is executed, third line, fourth line. After 10th line, the program has terminated. But because of some problems, if the program terminates at this line, at fourth line, then we call it as an exception. So this is the abnormal termination of the program. The abnormal termination of the program, we call it as an exception. See, let us see how we'll get the abnormal um, see six. Now, see, when I run the program, what will be the output here? So, this is the program. So it has executed first line, second line, third line, fourth line, fifth line, sixth line, seventh line, eighth line, ninth line, and 10th line. So what type of execution it is? Is a normal flow of the execution. So it has terminated the program at 10th line. So it has executed a normal flow of the execution. Now if you see here, run as Java application. Yeah, see, first line, second line, third line. After third line, there was a problem. It occurred the problem at the fourth line. But the remaining code did not execute it. The fifth line, sixth line, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th line, these lines code did not execute it because there was some problem occurred. There was an exception. The exception occurred at this statement. There was an exception at this statement. So the program terminated at this line. It did not execute the fifth line, sixth line, seventh line, eighth line, ninth, and 10th line. So this is an exception. The abnormal termination of a program is called exception. It's terminated the program abnormally. It's not a normal program. It's normal termination. What will be the normal termination? If there are 10 lines of code, if it execute all 10 lines of code and the program has terminated, then it will be a normal flow of the execution. But now it's terminated at fourth line. It did not execute the complete code. It's terminated abnormally. So the abnormal termination of your program, we call it as an exception. This is an exception. I hope you understand what's an exception. The abnormal termination of your program is called exception. This is the abnormal termination of your program. Then what to do with this? We need exception handling. The exception handling is nothing but, so making the abnormal termination as a normal termination is called exception handling. How can you handle the exception in Java? We can handle the exception in Java using try catch block. Using try catch block. Try block, catch block. What's a try block and what's a catch block? Try block is a block. The suspected code we will place within the try block. The suspected code, where we suspect the code, there is a chance of exception, the suspected code will place inside the try block. Then what's the catch block? The catch block have the exception handling code. Catch block will have the exception handling code. So let us see how it will be the try block. Now, you see, is a try block, is a try This is a block. How it looks like the block, the syntax of the block. This is a block. This is a try block. Try block. So this try block must followed by uh, catch block. So immediately we require a catch block after this try block. So here catch is catch block have the exception handling code. Exception, and then here we can print, in case if you want to print what type of exception is occurred, then we have a method that is print stack trace method. So e dot print stack trace. This method will print the exception name. It will print the exception name. So now what I do, this line of code I will place inside of this try block, because this is the suspected code. This is the suspected code. So I'm trying to place the suspected code inside the try block. So now we can handle this exception. This is a try block. This try block is for placing the exception handling exception suspected code. So this is the suspected code, and also it's a risky code. It's a risky code. The suspected code is a risky code, and then the catch block will have the exception handling code. This is the exception handling code. So after placing this try catch block, if you run the program now, let us see how it will be the execution of this program. Now see, after placing the try block, first line, second line, third line, then the problem was at fourth line. So after third line, there is no fourth line, but fifth line, sixth line, seventh line, eighth line, ninth, and 10th lines are executed. And then the exception is handled. What's the exception? The exception is java.lang.arithmetic exception by 0. In case if any number is divisible by 0, the value will be infinity. The infinity value is not available in 0, so it will throw an exception, that is arithmetic exception. That's the arithmetic exception. So we should not provide denominator as 0. So instead of that, here you can pass something like this. Here you can pass, don't pass denominator as 0. Don't pass denominator as 0. So now if you run this program, run as Java application. Now you see here the exception handling code is don't pass denominator as 0 for this catch. The exception handling code, this is the exception handling code, that is don't pass denominator as 0. So here it should not provide 0 as a denominator. In case if you want to print the exception, which exception is occurred, then we will use, that is e dot print stack. This is for finding was the exception, which exception is occurred. So here is the arithmetic exception, don't pass denominator as 0. So this is an exception handling. This is an exception handling. So in exception, we have different types of exception. So before that, we need to know the exception hierarchy. So to know the exception hierarchy, so the exception hierarchy here have a throwable. Throwable is a class. Throwable is a class. The throwable class is superclass for this exception class. Exception is a class. Exception is a class. So if you see here, place this cursor here, exception. So here if you see, exception is a class. This is available in java.lang package. Exception is a class. It's available in java.lang package. So the exception is a class. This exception, we have different types of exceptions. Those are runtime exception, IO exception, interrupted exception, and remote exception. So throwable is the superclass for this exception class. So this exception class gets inherited by the throwable class. So here, what's the exception? Exception is an abnormal termination of your program is called exception. Here we have two types of exceptions. Those are checked exception and unchecked exception. We have two types of exceptions. Those are checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. All runtime exceptions and its child class exceptions. It's a child exception. So runtime exception is an exception and arithmetic exception is the child class of runtime exception, and null pointer exception is also child class of runtime exception, class cost exception, illegal argument exception, then number format exception is the child class of illegal argument exception. These all are the exception classes. These all are the exception classes. These all are predefined exceptions. These all are predefined exceptions. These exceptions are provided by Java vendor. These all exceptions are provided by Java vendor. So all runtime exceptions is child classes. All are unchecked exceptions. All are unchecked exceptions. Other than this runtime exception and its child exceptions, remaining all are checked exceptions. IO exception is the checked exception, interrupted exception is the checked exception, and remote exception is the checked exception. These all are checked exceptions. File not found exception and UAF exception and interrupted IO exception. These all are checked exceptions. So we have two types of exceptions. Those are checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Then what's the checked exception? What's the unchecked exception? The exceptions which are checked by the compiler, we call it as a checked exception. The exceptions which are not checked by the compiler, we call it as a unchecked exception. So I will show you what are the checked exceptions and what are the unchecked exceptions. So this is in previous example is a what type of exception it is? It is null arithmetic exception. Is a arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception is unchecked exception. This exception is not checked by the this exception is not checked by the compiler. So this exception we call it as a checked exception, unchecked exception. Then how will be the checked exception? I will show you what's the checked exception. The checked exception is thread dot sleep of See here, now I will remove this line of code. Now see here, I have used the thread.sleep. So what's this? What's the function of this? We'll discuss later when we are discussing about threads concept. But see here, when I write this line of code, now the compiler is checking every line of the code. Is there any checked exceptions? So this line of code, the compiler is, when the compiler is checked, then the compiler is expecting to handle this exception. So the compiler will expect some exceptions. The compiler will expect some exceptions. Those all are checked exceptions. So here the compiler is throwing an exception, that is interrupted exception. So because of that it is throwing error. It is throwing error. It's a compile time error. It's a compile time error. So here the compiler is checking every line. The compiler is checking every line and is asking to throw an exception. Is asking to throw an exception. So here it is asking add throws. Because of this, so unhandled exception, if you see here, unhandled exception type interrupted exception. Unhandled exception type interrupted exception. So the compiler is expecting to handle this exception. The compiler is expecting to handle this exception. So when I handle this exception, now there is no error. When I use this throws interrupted exception, then there will be no error. There will be no error. So this is checked exception. The exception which is checked by the compiler, those are checked exception. But here, in case if I put this line of code, if I put this line of code here, previously you might have observed it. If I put this line of code here, now see here it is not throwing any exception. It is not throwing any error here, because here the compiler is not checking. The compiler is not checking this exception. The compiler is checking this exception, that is interrupted exception. What type of exception it is? Interrupted exceptions are checked exceptions. Interrupted exceptions are checked exceptions. The exceptions which are checked by the compiler, we call it as a checked exception. The exceptions which are not checked by the compiler, those are unchecked exceptions. So this is the arithmetic exception here, because no number should divisible by 0 in Java, because it will be infinity. There will be no infinity in Java. So it's an arithmetic exception. But here the compiler is not throwing any error. The compiler will not throw any error. But at runtime it will throw an at runtime when you are executing the program, when you are executing. So as of now, when you are writing the program, as default, by default, the Eclipse IDE will compile every line of the code. So compiler will check every line of code first. But here there is an exception here. There is an exception here, but it's not throwing any problem. The compiler is not throwing any problem here. But when you are executing the program, you will get the problem. See, when you execute it, now after this fifth line, no code will execute it. Fifth line. Sorry, it is not saved. First line, second line, and third line. So third line is executed. So after third line, there is a sleep method. So it is sleeping for See here. First line is executed, second line and third line is also executed. Then in fourth line, we are handling the exception. So it is don't pass denominator as 0. And again for the fifth line, here there is an exception. So the program has terminated here. The program has terminated here. If this program should not terminate at here, then what we have to do? We have to place this line of code inside the try block. Inside the try block. Now it will execute. Normally the program execution will be normal for the execution. Third line, after third line, sixth line, seventh line, eighth, ninth, and the 10th line has been executed. So what are the all unchecked exceptions? So arithmetic exception is the unchecked exception. When we'll check it is, it will not check by, it will not, this arithmetic exception will not check at compile time, it will check at runtime. And null pointer exception also, it will check at runtime. Class cost exception, null pointer exception, when there is no value, when you are getting the value from database, if there is no value, there is no object, then we will get null pointer exception. Then class cost exception, class cost exception. In case sometimes what we trying to do, we'll try to do the float value into double, to change the float value into double, to convert the one type to another type, one data type to another data type. Then we'll get this exception, class cost exception. Illegal argument exception. So generally the method have two arguments. In case if you pass three arguments, or if the method has three arguments, in case if you pass only two arguments, then we'll get this exception, that is illegal argument exception. And number format exception, index out of bound exception, array index out of, these all are the unchecked exceptions. Because these all exceptions are not checked by the compiler. But interrupted exception, if you see, exception here, this is the interrupted exception. This is the checked exception because it is checked. In case if there is no this exception, if you do not handle this exception, here you have a problem. So it is asking unhandled exception type interrupted exception. It is asking, it is the unhandled exception. It is asking to handle the exception. So the compiler is checking whether the exception is handled. So this is the checked exception. Because this exception is checking by the compiler, so we are calling as checked exception. So what are the exceptions? So IO exceptions and file not found exception. When you are reading the data from file, in case the file is, compiler will check whether the file is available or not. And EOF exception and interrupted IO exception. These all are the unchecked exceptions. Sorry, these all are the checked exceptions. Those are checked by the compiler. Unchecked exceptions are not checked by the compiler. Okay, these are the two types of exceptions in. What's the exception? The abnormal program is called exception. There are two types of exceptions. Those are checked exception and unchecked exceptions. The checked exceptions are exceptions. Those are checked by the compiler. What are the checked exceptions? IO exception and interrupted exception and IO exception subclasses. All are the checked exceptions. Then what are the unchecked exceptions? The exceptions which are not checked by the compiler or unchecked exceptions. Runtime exception and its child classes all are unchecked exceptions. Those are null pointer exception and index out of bound exception, number format exception, class cost exception. These all are the unchecked exceptions. Arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, class cost exception, illegal argument exception, number format exception. These all are the unchecked exceptions. Then how can you handle this exception? We can handle this exception in two ways. One is by using try catch block, and other way is by using throws keyword, by using throws keyword. By using throws keyword, we can handle only checked exceptions. only checked exceptions. By using throws keyword, we can handle only checked exceptions. Where we'll use this throws keyword along with method signature. This is the method signature. Main is the method. So just immediate to the method, we'll use throws keyword, and then we'll write our exception name. Our exception name. Exception name is interrupted exception. This is the default exception. This is a class. This is a class. This class is not provided. This class is not defined by us. This class is provided by Java vendor. Java vendor. Then arithmetic exception is also a class that is not defined by us. That class is also defined by Java vendor. So how we can handle these checked exceptions? The checked exceptions we can handle in two ways. One is by using throws keyword. Other way is by using try catch block. By using try catch block. Then how can you handle unchecked exceptions? Unchecked exceptions can handle only by using try catch block. Only by using try catch block. This interrupted exception cannot handle by using this throws keyword. So in case if you use here arithmetic exception, for commenting the code here like this we can comment it. So it means this line of code will not execute it. So now the line is executed. Yeah, I will put this fifth line out of this try block because here try block is handling this exception. I run this program, then the remaining lines of code will not execute. So after after third line, then we got an exception here, and again in the sixth line, in fifth line, we got an exception. So we cannot handle this exception, the unchecked exceptions using throws keyword. Using throws. So all unchecked exceptions must handle by try class. Must handle by try catch block. So if you place this inside this, place this inside the try block, then we can handle it. So then the program will terminate after 10th line. After 10th line. But this checked exception must handle by either one throws keyword or try block. Either one we can handle it. Just in case if you want to handle, yes we can handle by try catch block. So by try catch now. So checked exceptions can handle in two ways. One is by using throws keyword, other way is by using try catch block. But unchecked exceptions must handle by try catch. Handle by try catch. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is for today, and in tomorrow's session we will see the remaining concepts in the exceptions. Those are finally block. What's the finally block? And we'll see a throw keyword. We'll have a other keyword, throw keyword, and then we'll see the user defined exceptions. How we create an user defined exception and then how to handle those user-defined exception we'll see in tomorrow's session. Until then, take care. Bye bye. Good night.